Today we're in Genesis. We're going to be speaking from chapter 17. And we're going to be talking about the spiritual aspect of things a bit, and sometimes, this can throw people, so I'm going to need you to put your rubber duckies on, your boots. We might get into some deep water. You're probably going to hear some things you haven't heard before, maybe, or a concept that you haven't heard before. But that being said, let me read 1 Corinthians 2:11 through 16. It says, "For what man knoweth the things of a man, save the spirit, or ruach of a man which is in him? Even so, the things of Elohim knoweth no man, but the ruach of Elohim. Now we have received not the ruach of the world, but the ruach which is of Elohim, that we might know the things that are freely given to us of Elohim, which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but which Ruach Kodesh teacheth, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Ruach of Elohim, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. But he that is spiritual judgeth all things, yet he himself is judged of no man. For who have known the mind of the Adonai, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Mashiach." And that's just a precursor, disclaimer. If you don't understand it, or don't agree, just it's okay. Put it on the shelf. And maybe Yah expound on it, further for you later on down the line. Amen. And by all means, don't throw anything at the pastor. All right, let's jump right in. I'm gonna begin with Genesis 17:1. It says, "And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Yahuwah appeared unto Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty Elohim. Walk before me and be thou perfect." Okay. So, Abram, which means exalted father, he was 90 years old and 9. The number 90 speaks to being the righteous of Elohim. And the number 9 speaks to being an upright man. It's the number, it speaks to being not only an upright man, but a complete man. A man with the spirit of Elohim. Because you're not complete unless you have the spirit of Elohim. Man is the number 6, in scriptural numerics. And 3 is the number of spiritual completion. So when you put 6 and 3 together, you get 9, which is a spiritually complete man. And so the man goes from being upside down, once the spirit is added unto him, making him spiritually complete, to the number 9, which is upside right. So it speaks to being an upright man. It speaks to having the fruits of the Spirit, by which there are 9, as well as the gifts of the Spirit, by which is also 9. It speaks to judgment. It speaks to being, spiritual teacher, and so on and so forth. But, this is where Abram was in his walk. Amen. Spiritually speaking, this is where he was in his walk. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram, and said unto him, I am the Almighty Elohim. Walk before me and be thou perfect. And that word perfect doesn't mean without error. It actually speaks to being complete. Okay? Okay, now. It says, I am the Almighty Elohim. This is literally in the Hebrew, this is El Shaddai. And El speaks to, of course, the Most High. But this is El Shaddai, which the word Shaddai is in the Hebrew is 7706 in your Strong's. It's in your Strong's, you'll see that it speaks to the Almighty. But a more literal interpretation of Shaddai would be actually the breasted one. You know, and there's a lot of conjecture, you know, about Shaddai, you know, but you know, I'm convinced that it's actually speaking to the feminine aspect of the Most High. Yeah, I said it. You know, you know, and I'm not saying that just haphazardly. You know that I've done my homework. You know, but the word for breast in the Hebrew is shad. You know, we're going to take a look at a couple passages where it's used. In Job, chapter 24, verses 9 and 10, you know, it says, they pluck the fatherless from the breast and take the pledge of the poor. They cause them to go naked without clothing, and they take away the sheep from the hungry. Okay? Now, this word, breast, translated here, is shad. Also, it occurs in Lamentations 4, 3 and 4. It says, even the sea monsters draw out the breast, they give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people has become cruel like the ostriches in the wilderness. The tongue of the suckling child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. For the young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. You know, so, you know, this is unmistakably talking about, you know, breastises. Yeah. You know, so. And the word used here is number 7699, and it is shad, you know, and it speaks to the breast of a woman or animal. Okay, so when we start talking about El Shaddai, you know, which comes from the same word, as you can clearly see, it has shad within it, but it has the yod on the end, which speaks, you know, mainly to, you know, my, you know, can speak to my or the, you know, mostly my. So it actually speaks to my breasted El, you know, El Shaddai. You know, now, in conjunction with this, you know, when you scripture speaks about breast, because of the understanding, you know, the thought processes of their culture, which is quite different than the thought processes of our culture. See, we have a Western mindset. They had an Eastern mindset, which is totally different. See, when we think of things, you know, if someone showed us, you know, two things, we're gonna look and see if we can identify with, you know, with how they look, the similarities in us viewing them. You know, and so our minds, you know, automatically go there. You know, the Western mindset looks for visual similarities. You know, yet the Eastern mindset is quite a bit different. The Eastern mindset looks for similar functionalities. You know, so when the Eastern mindset see two different things, they look at, you know, how they function, and do they function similarly. You know, that's what makes them like one another in the Eastern mindset. Not that they look like one another, like the Western mindset views it, but because they function like one another. You know, and so that's how they identify, you know, with two things that are alike. Okay, now, so with that in mind, you know, when they viewed the breast, they viewed, you know, sustenance. They thought of sustenance because that's the function of the breast with woman and with animal. It's to give sustenance to the children. Amen? You know, it's to feed them. You know, and so, you know, it became acquainted with provision and with sustenance of all types. You know, and so here we see in Job 24:10, it's speaking about that sustenance, you know, that they were lacking because they plucked the fatherless from the breast. So, i.e., taking away their sustenance. You know, hence you see in verse 10 it says, they cause him to go naked and without clothing. He doesn't have his necessities. You know, they take away the sheep from the hungry. You know, so we see here that sustenance has been taken away because they've been plucked from the breast. You know, they're identifying with the function of it. Can everybody see that?
Amen.
You know, also in Lamentations 4:3-4, we see it says, even the sea monsters draw out the breast. They give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people has become cruel like the ostriches in the wilderness. You know, and in conjunction with that, with the sustenance being taken away from them, we see in Lamentations 4, it says, the tongue of the suckling child cleaveth to the mouth, to the roof of his mouth, because he's not getting any sustenance. You know, so it says, the tongue of the suckling child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. They're not getting the sustenance that they need to survive. You know, and that's what El Shaddai speaks to. It speaks to the breasted El that gives us our sustenance, that gives us what we need. You know, hence you see in verse 2 it says, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. You know, because it also speaks when they thought of, you know, the function of the breast, it also spoke to fruitfulness. You know, as in, you know, children. And so you see being noted that we'll multiply thee exceedingly. Now, concerning this, we're going to take a little sidebar. Like my sidebar? You know. Yeah, that's all kind of spiritual drinks there. You know, that's not, none of that is liquor, okay? That's all spiritual drink, you know. Yeah, that's all new wine, you know. That's if you want to get your spiritual high on, okay? Okay, but we're going to take a look at this passage in Job 5:8-19. And see, and the reason that I take the sidebar is because I know this is a new concept, you know, and this, a lot of people, you know, don't do well with new stuff, you know, but know and understand that Yah doesn't, you know, I believe, you know, and this is my personal faith, you know, I believe that every word within Scripture was put there for a reason. You know, I believe that the Ruach HaKodesh led those that inscribed Scripture and wrote it down, you know, and directed them to the words to use. You know, that's what I believe. I don't believe that the words was chosen by happenstance. I believe that they chose and utilized different terms for different reasons, just like we do in communicating today. You know, we use different terminology to mean different things. Otherwise, why use different terminology? It just doesn't make sense to me, but you know, that's the way my mind goes, okay? You know, so I think that the reason Scripture utilizes different terms is because it's trying to point out different aspects, you know, for us to understand. With that in mind, you know, this passage here in Job, chapter 5, you know, utilizes all three terms for of Elohim. Can my first reader read Job 5:8-19, please?
I would seek unto Yah, and unto Yah would I commit my cause, which doeth great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number, who giveth rain upon the earth, and sendeth waters upon the fields, to set up on high those that be low, and those which mourn may be exalted to safety. He disappointed the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the froward is carried headlong. They meet with darkness in the daytime, and grope in the noonday as in the night. But he saveth the poor from the sword, from their mouth, and from the hand of the mighty. So the poor hath hope, and iniquity stoppeth her mouth. Behold, happy is the man whom Yah correcteth. Therefore despise thou not the chastening of the Almighty. For he maketh sore, and bindeth up. He woundeth, and his hands make whole. He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles. Yea, in 7 there shall be no evil touch thee.
Thank you. Okay. Now, I was praying about whether or not to share this with you guys. And yeah, put it on my heart that I should. But it was at the last minute, and so I didn't get a chance to actually, put the Hebrew terms for God that's utilized here. So I'm just going to tell you what they are. Okay. Now, when we read in Job 5:8, it says, it literally says, I would seek unto El. See, this is Strong's number 410. This is El. El is the masculine form. It's the masculine form of Elohim, if you would. Elohim is a plural term. El is masculine singular. Okay, it says, I will seek unto El and unto Elohim would I commit my cause. Okay? El is identified with judgment, and with judgment and the judging of things and folks. Okay? Now, and it says unto Elohim, which is like I say, plural, will I commit my cause. Everyone's kind of familiar with Elohim, it occurs all over the place. But sometimes when, it says, now take note that the King James translators, they translated both of these terms simply as God. But they're not making any distinction betwixt the terminology that's being used for God, even though Scripture is making a distinction. Can you see that? Okay, and this is a unique passage in that it has all 3 terms in the Elohim family, if you would. You have Elohim, the plural term. You have Elohim, the masculine singular term. And down here in verse 17, where it says, behold, happy is the man whom Eloah, which is the feminine singular term, corrective. Therefore, despise not thou the chastening of Shaddai, the breasted one. So you see, the feminine term Elohim is used in the very same sentence as Shaddai, which speaks to the breasted one. Why do you think that is? Could it be because females have breasts? Could it be because it was dealing with the feminine aspect of Elohim? I think so. And this is not the only time that is utilized like this. But I put this here as an example. Now, for those who would go to the next verse and says, for he maketh sore and bindeth up, he woundeth his hands. He woundeth and his hands make whole. This word he right here is number 2931 in the Hebrew, and it's actually who. And in that it can be translated as he. It's mainly translated out of 200 and something times. It's translated the mass majority of the time as the same or this or which. So it could just as well be saying, behold, happy is the man whom Eloah, corrective, therefore despise not thou chastening of Shaddai, for the same maketh sore and bindeth up. And this word he right there is just implied, just like right here. So could be she woundeth and her hands make whole, and she shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7, there shall no evil touch thee. You know, so, you know, I know that's kind of heavy, but I warned you at first, didn't I? You know, but I would really, challenge you to consider, at least, because, why else use different terms if they didn't mean different things or they didn't represent different things? Otherwise it makes no sense. And I'm all about what makes sense. So you have all 3 terms here. You have a masculine term, El, you have a feminine term, Eloi, and you have a plural term, Elohim. Makes sense to me. All right, sidebar over. Let me have my next reader read Genesis 17, 3 through 8, please.
And Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall your name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made you. And I will make you exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come out of you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a Elohim unto thee and to your seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim.
Okay. Now, we see here, it says, Abram fell on his face, and now Elohim talked with him. Again, why use 2 different terms if they're the same thing? But, anyhow, it says, neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be called Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. And, I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee, and to thy seed after thee, and to thy seed after thee. And to thy seed after thee, and I will give unto thee. And then it says again, to thy seed after thee. Now, Apostle Paul gives us a hint with this aspect concerning the seed after him. In Galatians 3:16 it says, now Abraham and his seed, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made, as we see they're being made. Amen. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Mashiach, or the Messiah. So we see here the New Testament, the Brit Kadashah, is helping us to understand, what's going on here and what Yah is actually talking about. Amen. He's talking about the coming Messiah, to that ultimately, quotations, quote unquote, ultimately, he's talking about Mashiach. He's talking about the Messiah, which will come after him. Okay? All right. Let me have my next reader read verses 9 through 14.
And Elohim said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you, and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations, he that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. And he that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant.
Okay. So here it is. We see that Elohim is telling Abram, this is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised. And it shall be a token. This word token is oath, you know, and it speaks to a signal, a distinguishing mark, a sign, you know, and it shall be a sign or a signal or a distinguishing mark of the covenant betwixt me and you. And it says, my covenant shall, in verse 13, it speaks of my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. You know, so, speaks to an everlasting covenant, you know, in the flesh. And the circumcision and the uncircumcised man child, the uncircumcised man child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. Okay, now it's important that we get what is happening here. For this is a renewal and fulfillment or repletion of the original covenant that Yah made with Abraham. You know, if we think back to a couple chapters ago, when Yah made covenant with Abraham, he had him, you know, cut the animals in half, and he came betwixt the animals, you know, what they call cutting the covenant, you know. That was the beginning of the covenant, amen? You know, but here, you know, we see something else is happening. And this is years later. You know, I pray you can see that. You know, this is like 9 years later. You know, this is, I'm not sure if it's exactly 9, but it's years later, anyhow. You know, we see the fulfillment or repletion. You know, to replete something means to make it, you know, fully ready for use. You know, to get it, everything, it has everything that it needs now in order to be utilized. You know, so what we see here is the fulfillment, you know, or repletion of the original covenant that Yah made with Abraham. You know, now remember that Yah tells us to end from the beginning. So if you don't understand this, then you likewise won't understand its counterpart, the renewed covenant of Yahushua. Because, you know, he tells us to end from the beginning, and he's teaching us the way in which we have to go, you know, even with the story of Abraham. You know, and what you'll find is that, you know, all those that come after him, they also will go the same way. Because there's only one way of Elohim. There's only one way of Yahuwah. You know, you can only get to him via one way, even as our Messiah told us, right? You know, so, you know, in understanding this, we'll also understand what is actually happening with Yahshua and with his body. In Genesis 13, 14 through 16, we read, and it says, and Yahuwah said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thy eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Remember that? Remember him telling them that? Mm-hmm. You know, and also we see in Genesis 15, verses 3 through 5, it says, and Abram said, behold, to me thou hast given no seed. And lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of Yahuwah came unto him, saying, this shall not be thine heir, but he that come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad and said, look now toward the heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. Hallelujah. You know, sound like the same thing, right? But what I'd like you to see is that within these two very different passages, because they are very different, within these two very different passages is that Yah has actually made two very different promises concerning two very different seeds. These two seeds are as twins, Selah. They have many similarities, but also many differences. You know, when we consider the first promise, it was, I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. Well, the dust of the earth speaks to things that are fleshy, you know, because man's flesh is made from what? The dust of the earth. Amen. Okay? You know, but if we look at the second promise, he says, now look toward heaven. You know, first he told them to look toward the land, but now he's telling them, look toward the heaven. And tell the stars if thou be able to number. So shall thy seed be. So he's talking about one seed is going to be as the dust of the earth. They're going to be fleshly. But the other seed is going to be like the stars of the heaven. They're going to be heavenly or spiritual. Can you see that? You know, yeah, they sound the same, but they actually are quite different. You know, and you'll see this distinction, if you would, you know, further in Scripture as well. You know, he's doing a work with two different seeds. You know, and he's made promises concerning both of them. One will be as the dust of the earth, you know, for multitude. And one will be as the stars of the heaven, for multitude. You know, I don't know if you've ever been out on a really dark night, you know, and looked up into the heavens. There's a lot of stars up there. Amen. You know, they're just as innumerable as the dust of the earth. Amen. You know, but there's a very big difference betwixt the two, is it not? You know, one is earthly, the other one is heavenly. You know, and so, you know, you need to be able to see these distinctions because they're not put in Scripture for nothing. You know, and so this is what I'm trying to point out to you, is that they are very different. And they're two very different promises, and they're concerning two very different seeds. You know, even though they have similarities, they also have just as many differences. You know, when we look at Genesis 15, 13 through 18, it says, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward they shall come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land. From the river Mitzrayim, the river of Mitzrayim or Egypt, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Okay, you know, now I just want to speak to this on the spiritual side for a minute. You know, first of all, take note that the covenant is made with Abram. And he says, unto thy seed have I given this land. You know, who was the seed of Abram? Ishmael. Absolutely. You know. Okay, now it says, unto thy seed I have given this land. You know, and when we're talking about land, spiritually speaking, land can speak to our flesh bodies. You know, hence we see in Psalm 66:1, it says, make a joyful noise unto Elohim, all ye lands. Also in Psalms 100, make a joyful noise unto Yahuwah, all ye lands. You know, so I'm just showing you, scripturally speaking, from a spiritual perspective, you know, lands can speak to people. Because, you know, obviously not talking about the land we're standing on because it can't make a joyful noise. Amen. You know, now, spiritually speaking, well, the definition of Mitzrayim is double straits. You know, and actually spiritual Mitzrayim is actually Judah. You know, the land of Judah. You know, and it says that, you know, I have given thy seed this land from the river of Mitzrayim unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Now, Euphrates means fruitfulness. Now, spiritually speaking, this is speaking of our borders will be from devil straits or devil trouble to fruitfulness. See, and this is the way of Yahuwah. The way of Yahuwah will lead us from out of devil trouble, the devil trouble of the world, into the fruitfulness of Yahushua. Those are our borders. That's where we'll live and move and have our being and walk the way of Yahuwah, is within, is getting from devil trouble over to fruitfulness. Let me have my next reader read Genesis 17:15 through 22.
And Elohim said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto Elohim, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And Elohim said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and Elohim went up from Abraham.
Hallelujah. All right. Now, we see in verse 15, it says, And Elohim said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. Now, we see here that Yah has changed both of their names. Amen. He's changed both of their names. What did he do to change both of their names? He added the Hey, the Hebrew letter Hey. The Hebrew letter Hey is the 5th letter of the alphabet. And it speaks to a window. It speaks to a window or a door, if you would. Well, technically speaking, door is actually the dalet. So it speaks to a window, okay? And the Hey, the 5th letter of the alphabet, actually speaks to grace. And grace is an acronym for God's redemption at Christ's expense. I pray that you can see that spiritually speaking, him adding the Hey to Abram and Sarai, was actually putting Yahushua within him. Now, Sarai, her name means, Sarah means nobleman, princess, or queen. Sarai means princess in and of itself. Could it be that she's going from being a princess to a queen? Now, verse 16 says, I will bless her and give thee a son, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. This is the same thing that he said to Abraham, right? Kings of people shall be of her. This covenant, it sounds real similar to the previous one, but it's different. If you pay attention, it's very different. It's verse 17 says, And Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? Really? 100 scriptural numeric speaks to the children of promise. And Sarah, that is 90 years old. There, anybody remember what what Sarah meant? I mean, not Sarah, but what number 90 meant? Righteousness of Elohim. You know, and Abraham said unto Elohim, well, let's stop right there for a minute. You know, so here it is, Abraham laughing. He's saying, you know, shall a child be born unto him that's 100 years old? You know, and Sarah that is 90 years old. What took so long? Can anybody, does anyone have the spiritual eyes to see what took so long? Well, yeah, they had to be ready. I'm looking for a little bit more than that.
I guess you can say that for them to be of age like they were, it had to let the people know that this was of God from a miracle perspective.
Well, yeah, you can look at that, and I agree with that. Not quite what I'm looking for, but yes, I do agree with that.
Is it that they jumped in front of y'all and did their own thing first?
Well, no, it doesn't really have to do with the jumping in front of y'all and doing their own thing first, per se.
They had to be spiritually ready or spiritually fulfilled?
Yeah, that's the along the lines that I'm going for, but I'm looking for something specific, you know. And what I'm looking for is, you know, Yah was waiting for her to become 90, because 90 represents the righteousness of Elohim. He was waiting for her to become righteous. Just as he's waiting for the bride of Yahushua to become righteous. And when the bride of Yahushua become righteous, then she too will bear the promised seed. See, and that's where we have to get to. We have to become the righteousness of Elohim. And we'll become impregnated by the promise of Elohim, just as Sarah was. Hallelujah. That's Yahweh. But anyway, verse 18 goes on to say, and Abraham said unto Elohim, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And what does 19 say? It says, and Elohim said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed. See, a lot of people don't believe that the bride of the Messiah is going to bear a child either. Because it's been such a long time, has it not? It's been a long time. You know, no one, you know, she's done surpassed the childbearing age. So no one believes that Sarah could bear a child, and no one believes that the bride of Yahushua can bear a child. But yeah. But yeah. See, they're not factoring in the Yah factor. But yeah. You know, he says, Sarah thy wife shall bear a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Yitzhak. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. Now, as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. So he's going to grant, you know, Abram's request. What was Abram's request? Absolutely, that Ishmael might live before him. He's going to grant his request. He says, and as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Yitzhak, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and Elohim went up from Abraham. You know, and what I want you to understand is the spiritual significance of this, because it's huge. You know, if you're not able to properly identify spiritual Ishmael and spiritual Yitzhak, you're going to be in trouble. Okay? Now, we get a little help from Brit Kadashah. Apostle Paul put us on the trail. In Galatians 4:22, he teaches us, he says, for it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. Who was the bondmaid? Hagar. Who was the free woman? Sarah. All right, everybody together on that, right? It says, but he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. But he of the free woman was by promise. Which things are an allegory. For these are the two covenants. The one from Mount Sinai was generative to bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. So, spiritually speaking, who is Jerusalem's counterpart? Sarah, absolutely. You know, so if Mount Sinai is Hagar, then Jerusalem must be Sarah. Can anybody see that? Okay, now she was the free woman. In fact, Hagar was her bondmaid. Amen? You know, so now we see these two covenants, and we see these two women that we're actually speaking concerning. We're actually seeing as we're learning their stories here in Genesis. And so if we're to properly understand these two covenants, we have to properly understand what's going on with Hagar and Sarah. Amen? Make sense? You know, is this not what Scripture is teaching us? Okay, so hereby we learn that Hagar equals the old covenant of Moshe and Mount Sinai, from which we get Torah. Can anybody see that? All right. Now, Sarah speaks to the renewed covenant of Yahushua and New Jerusalem, our promised land. Amen. And Yahushua's commandments. Because each of the covenants have words of the covenant. So, you know, this is why you see, you know, Yahushua say, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. You know, because there's words of his covenant, they're the words of his covenant, even as, you know, what Moshe shared from Elohim was the words of the covenant given to on Mount Sinai. So I pray that you can see the parallel, because both of the promises are similar, but yet they're very different. You know, and both of the covenants are similar, yet they're very different. Okay? So Galatians 4:28 goes on to say, now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. You know, there are some, you know, there are some promises that's in Scripture that have yet to be fulfilled concerning the children of Elohim. Amen? The sons of Elohim. Amen? You know, we're as Isaac, we're the children of promise. You know, now, but as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Ruach, even so it is now. So what Apostle Paul is saying is that those children of promise, you know, such as himself and the other apostles, you know, were being persecuted by Ishmael, their big brother, you know, which spoke to the Yahudim and Israel. Amen? You know, that's who was persecuting them. Was it not? That's who, you know, put our Messiah on the torture stake. Verse 30, nevertheless, what saith the Scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son. And the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. You know, so the two will not be joint heirs, you know, per se. You know, there's going to be a separation. Verse 31, so then, brethren, we are not the children of the bondwoman, but of the free. You know, and that's huge. You know, because, you know, when you're born a slave and you grow up as a slave, you tend to act like a what? A slave. You have the mindset of what? A slave. You know, you do things as slaves do. You know, but when you're free, you have the mindset of a free man or woman. And you do things, you know, in accordance to that freedom that you have. You know, and that's a vast difference. That's a vast difference. And we need to recognize that difference. You know, so that we can stop, you know, so we can separate the bondwoman from the bondwoman's child from the free woman's child. Amen. You know, that has to happen at some point. We're gonna get more into that as we get further into it, you know, in the story of Abraham. But you know, let me have my next reader read Genesis 17:23 through 27, please.
And Abraham took Ishmael, his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were brought with his money, every male and among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the same self day as Elohim had said unto him. And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And in the same self day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael his son. And all the men of his house born in the house and brought with money of the stranger were circumcised with him.
Okay, thank you. And just as a side note, when I was speaking about, you know, the number 90 and everything, you know, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was when that the first covenant was made with Abram when he was 90 years old. You know, and I'm not sure about that. Let me retract that. I'll check it out and get back to you. All right. But here it is. We see it says, and Abram took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were brought with his money, every male among men of Abram's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day as Elohim had said unto him. You know, 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. You know, Genesis 16:10 through 12 taught us, it says, and the angel of Yahuwah said unto her, speaking of Hagar, you know, said, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of Yahuwah said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael. Because Yahuwah hath heard thy affliction. And Ishmael name means heard of El. And it says, and he shall be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. You know, this is the same thing that he told Abram, that he would multiply his seed, and it shall not be numbered for multitude. You know, I pray that everyone can see that the original covenant that was made with Abram and Hagar was actually made with Abram and Hagar. That you can see that it was made with Hagar in addition to being made with Abram. You know, the promise wasn't, you know, it wasn't just given to Abram, it was given to Hagar concerning her seed as well. Can you see that it was given to both of them? You know, and this union produced Ishmael, the wild man whom El hears. You know, and that's very revelatory in and of itself. You know, this original the original part of the covenant was made for Abram and Hagar and produced Ishmael, the wild man whom El hears. You know, now we spoke a little bit, got into this a little bit last week and spoke about this spiritual counterpart of Ishmael being Israel. You know, you may have noticed that as Israel, Ishmael would receive 12 sons. Amen. You know, that's not by happenstance. It's to point us in the right direction. In Joshua 5:4-6, it says, and this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise. All the people that came out of Mizraim were that were males, even all the men of war died in the wilderness by the way after they came out of Mizraim. Now all the people that came out were circumcised. Okay, so they bore the oath or sign or distinguishing mark of that everlasting covenant in the flesh. Amen. But it goes on to say, but all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Mizraim, them they had not circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness till all the people that were men of war, which came out of Mizraim, were consumed, because they obeyed not the voice of Yahuwah, unto whom Yahuwah sware that he would not show them the land, which Yahuwah sware unto their fathers that he would give us, a land that floweth with milk and honey. Okay, and also, let us consider Numbers 14:22 and 23, because it tells us why. It says, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Mizraim and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. You know, can you see that within these passages that Ishmael, which dwelt in the presence of his brethren as prophesied, we see Israel dwelling with the Egyptians. We know that Hagar was an Egyptian, amen. She was an Egyptian, and so he truly did dwell in the presence of his brethren. And he received Yah's covenant in the flesh. Hence we see that it tells us now all the people that came out were circumcised. So we see that he did receive Yah's covenant in the flesh, i.e. he was circumcised while in rebellion. Because even before they were circumcised, before they came out, and they were a rebellious people, a stiff-necked people, and was truly a wild man who was against every man and having every man against him. Literally everyone around them was against them. From Mitzrayim to all the nations that of Canaan in which they were going to, everyone was against them and they were against everyone. Sad part was that Yah was for them and they was also against him too. They were fighting against him just like they were fighting against everyone else. So much so that Yah said they would not see his glory. He said that those which have seen his glory and his miracles, they would not see the land that was promised to their fathers. And this goes for those of us now today as well on a spiritual note. Neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. Don't think that you're going to provoke Elohim and still get in. Don't think for a moment that you're going to continuously provoke Elohim, go against his will for your life, and get into the promised land, i.e. New Jerusalem. Don't think that's going to happen. It didn't. He's no respecter of persons. It didn't happen for Israel, and it won't happen for you. I pray you can see that. Now, I want you to take note that Ishmael is the seed of Abraham and is included in the promises of Elohim. He's included in the promises of Elohim and was also included in Yah's everlasting covenant concerning his promised seed. Hence, he was circumcised and bore the sign of the covenant. Yet and still, he isn't that promised seed, even though he was included within the covenant. No more than his counterpart, Israel, that came out from Mizraim, was the promised seed. Israel that came out from Mizraim was not the promised seed. And even though they were allowed to receive the sign of the everlasting covenant of Yahuwah, you know, which is the sign of the everlasting covenant of Yahuwah, the spiritual covenant, which is the Sabbath, they still are not the promised seed. You know, so all you're doing is seeing the same thing that happened with natural Ishmael is happening with spiritual Ishmael. You know, they are allowed to take the covenant and be a part of the covenant, you know, but, you know, because of their stiff-necked nature, of them being such a wild man, you know, the mass majority of them will not get in, save that which was Joshua and Caleb. So we see in Exodus 31:12-14, it says, and Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep. For it is a sign. This is the very same word that that in Genesis said token, you know, which is oath. You know, it speaks to a sign, a signal, or a distinguishing mark. It is a sign, a signal, or distinguishing mark between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahuwah who doeth sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Can you see that the penalty is almost the same as those who wouldn't get circumcised? Except for on the spiritual note, the penalty is even higher. It says, you shall surely be put to death. Can you see that difference? You know, the rest is the same. The soul should be cut off from among their people. You know, and see, the Sabbaths are the sign, the signal, the token, the distinguishing mark of the renewed covenant, which is a covenant of a spiritual covenant. It's not a fleshly covenant, like the token or oath or distinguishing mark, sign, signal of the flesh covenant, which was circumcision. See, and this is why Paul understood this. This is why he would say you don't have to be circumcised in order to receive Yahushua and to receive salvation. You don't have to be circumcised, you know, because that covenant, you know, at that time was fulfilled. That covenant was fulfilled. See, but this covenant, you know, which had its commencement, you know, in the wilderness with Israel, wouldn't have its culmination until the spiritual end. You know, and so this is an everlasting covenant, you know, spiritually speaking, forever. You know, just as the fleshly covenant was. You know, so here it is. We're not the, this is what Paul is talking about. You don't have to enter back into the fleshly covenant. You know, now the spiritual covenant is made available unto us. You know, it's been fulfilled. You know, so why not just enter into this better covenant? Why go into the older covenant? You know, so this is the sign of our covenant in Yahushua. It's the Sabbaths. Now, yes, Israel's allowed to enter into that everlasting covenant, even as Israel is allowed to enter into that everlasting covenant, even as Ishmael was when he was 13. 13 is the number of rebellion. So it's speaking of Ishmael entering in the covenant with Elohim while he's yet rebellious. Even as we see the nation of Israel, when they came out, they were circumcised, they were in the covenant of Elohim, but yet they were still rebellious. Amen? You know, but eventually Ishmael and the promised seed had to be separated. And likewise, you know, eventually Ishmael and the promised seed will have to be separated. And we're going to get more into, as we go on, we're going to get more into this spiritual Ishmael and the spiritual promised seed. You know, so hence we see likewise the house of Jacob that was born in bondage and the children of Israel that was born in the wilderness. You know, we see this distinction being made. You know, and that distinction, you know, is being made even as the covenant, one covenant was made with Abram and the other one was Abraham. You think that's just by happenstance? No, that is a distinction that Scripture is making for a specific reason. And it's so that you can identify who's the natural and who's the spiritual. And if you don't get that, you know, then you may fall victim to, you know, being a part of a natural covenant, you know, or trying to fulfill a spiritual covenant naturally, or trying to fulfill a natural covenant spiritually. Not gonna work, you know. But that's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.